Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and support me. The rain fell in heavy sheets against the windows of the presidential estate, a relentless reminder of the storm that had been brewing for months. James Harrison stood by the glass, staring out at the dark clouds rolling in over Washington, D.C. His reflection, gaunt and weary, mirrored back at him. He was no longer president, not after losing the most brutal election of his career. The weight of the defeat hung heavy on his shoulders, but what troubled him most wasn't the loss itself. It was the nagging suspicion that something far worse was at play. It wasn't just politics. He thought something deeper, something dangerous. His thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock on the door. Harrison turned to see General Sarah DeWitt standing in the doorway. She had served as his most trusted military advisor, and though she wasn't in uniform tonight, her presence carried the same gravity it always had. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she said, stepping into the room and closing the door behind her. "I might as well have," Harrison replied, his voice tight. "What's the news?" "No, just scanning the room for listening devices." Though she knew there wouldn't. "This came through our back channels. I thought you should see it before anyone else." Harrison took the file, flipping it open. His eyes widened as he read through the first few pages. It was a series of correspondences, secret meetings, and encrypted transmissions between the newly elected president, Victor Caulfield's administration, and an alien race known as the Zenithians. Harrison had heard of the Zenithians before everyone had. They were the alien diplomats who had arrived in Earth's orbit years ago, offering peace and technology in exchange for cooperation. But this was something different. They not just allies, Harrison muttered, reading further. They controlling things, dictating terms. DeWitt nodded grimly. Caulfield's administration signed a secret pact with the Zenithians, one that essentially hands over control of Earth's resources and people. In exchange, the Zenithians have promised technological advancements, but at a cost. The people of Earth will become little more than laborers, pawns in the Zenithians' galactic empire. Harrison's stomach churned. He had suspected corruption, but nothing on this scale. Does anyone else know? Not yet. DeWitt said, "I brought this to you first because, well, I trust you, James. You need to do something." "Do something," Harrison scoffed, slamming the file shut. "I am not president anymore. Caulfield controls the government. He controls everything now." "But you still have people," DeWitt said, her voice firm, "people who believe in you, people who know what kind of man Caulfield is." Harrison rubbed a hand over his face, his mind racing. He thought about the millions of people who had voted for him, the ones who believed in his message of independence and strength. He couldn't let them down, not when the stakes were this high. But to go up against Caulfield, to fight an entire government and an alien force, it was a suicide mission. But what choice did he have? "I'll need more proof," Harrison said, finally, his voice low. "We can just go public with this without something solid to back it up." DeWitt smiled, a glint of steel in her eyes. "I thought you might say that." "I've already got a lead on where we can find the original treaty documents. We'll need a team, though, a small one, discreet." Harrison nodded, his mind already forming a plan. "We'll need to move quickly. If Caulfield or the Zenithians catch wind of this, they want to deteriorate," assured him. "Not if we were careful." Harrison took a deep breath, feeling the familiar surge of adrenaline that came with a fight worth winning. This wasn't just about politics anymore. This was about freedom, about the future of humanity. "I am in," he said, his voice resolute. "Let's take them down." 2 days later, Harrison found himself in a dimly lit warehouse on the outskirts of the city. The air was thick with the smell of oil and rust, the faint hum of generators providing the only sound. It was the kind of place where deals were made in the shadows, far from the prying eyes of the government. DeWitt had gathered a small team of trusted allies for the mission. There was David Cypher Morales, a hacker with a reputation for getting into places no one else could, and Evelyn Graves, a former intelligence officer who had worked closely with Harrison during his presidency. They were the best of the best, and more importantly, they were loyal. "We've got one shot at this," DeWitt said, her voice low as the team huddled around a table strewn with maps and blueprints. "The facility we retargeting is a Zenithian-controlled site, heavily guarded, but they want to be expecting that." "They've already infiltrated that deep?" Harrison asked, his brows furrowing. "They've embedded themselves in key infrastructure," Evelyn replied. "Mostly under the radar. Caulfield's administration is helping cover their track." If we can get into the facility, we should be able to access the original treaty documents and get out before they even know we were there. Harrison nodded, studying the map. What is our entry point? Cypher leaned forward, tapping a spot on the map. There is a service tunnel here, used for maintenance. It's ours off the books. No security cameras. We'll go in through there, grab the documents, and get out. Sounds simple enough, Harrison said, though he knew nothing was ever that simple. The team moved quickly, preparing their gear and finalizing the plan. Harrison felt the weight of what they were about to do, pressing down on him. This wasn't just a mission. It was a rebellion. If they were caught, there would be no trial, no second chances. But if they succeeded, they could expose the greatest betrayal in human history. The service tunnel was narrow and dark, the sound of dripping water echoing through the concrete wall. Harrison led the way, his pulse quickening with every step. Doit and Cypher followed close behind, their footsteps silent in the gloom. They moved with practiced precision, navigating the twists and turns of the tunnel, until they reached a heavy metal door. Cypher knelt in front of the door, pulling out a small device from his pack. "Give me a minute," he muttered, his fingers flying over the keypad. After a few tense seconds, there was a soft click, and the door slid open. They stepped into a dimly lit corridor, the air cold and sterile. Harrison's heart raced as they moved deeper into the facility, the weight of the mission heavy on his mind. This was it, the moment of truth. The room they were looking for was at the end of the corridor, a small, unassuming office that held the key to everything. Harrison and DeWitt stood guard while Cypher went to work on the terminal inside, his fingers dancing over the holographic display. "Got it," Cypher whispered, after a few moments, his voice tight with excitement. "I forgot the treaty." Harrison felt a surge of relief, but it was short-lived. A sudden alarm blared through the facility, red lights flashing as the walls vibrated with the sound of approaching footsteps. "They know we were here," DeWitt said, her voice tense. "We forgot to move." "Cypher, send the data to our secure link," Harrison ordered. "We'll hold them off." As Cypher worked to upload the files, Harrison and DeWitt took positions near the entrance, weapons drawn. Zenithian guards rounded the corner, their sleek, armored forms shimmering in the red emergency light. Harrison fired first, the crack of gunfire echoing through the corridor. The Zenithians moved with inhuman speed, returning fire with energy weapons that hummed with lethal power. DeWitt took down 2 of them with precise shots, but more kept coming, their eyes glowing with a cold, predatory light. "We were outnumbered," DeWitt shouted over the noise. "We just need more time." Harrison yelled back, reloading his weapon as another guard fell. The air was thick with the smell of ozone and burning metal, the firefight escalating with every second. Harrison's breath came in, ragged gasps as he fired again, the sharp recoil of his weapon jarring his shoulder. The Zenithians kept coming, their movements fluid and calculated, as if each one was part of a larger collective mind. Harrison had faced his share of enemies in his time, but nothing quite like this. These weren't cheese soldiers. They were predators. Cypher Dawit shouted over the gunfire, glancing back toward the small office where Cypher was furiously typing away. "How much longer?" "Almost there," Cypher called out, his voice strained with concentration. The flickering red light of the alarm reflected off his sweat-slicked face as he worked to finish the data transfer. Harrison took down another Zenithian, the alien's saw body crumpling to the floor with a dull thud. But it wasn't enough. More of them were coming faster than they could take them down. "They were gonna overrun us," DeWitt shouted, her voice tight with frustration. "Then we hold them off as long as we can." Harrison growled, his eyes narrowing. He fired again, his aim steady despite the chaos around them. A Zenithian broke through the line, its elongated limbs moving in a blur as it closed the distance between them. Harrison barely had time to react before it was on him, its sharp claw-like fingers slashing through the air. He dodged to the side, feeling the razor-sharp edge of the alien's claws graze his arm. Pain shot through him, but he gritted his teeth, refusing to slow down. With a quick movement, he brought his weapon up and fired point-blank into the Zenithian's chest. The creature let out a high-pitched shriek before collapsing in a heap at his feet. "Got it," Cypher shouted triumphantly, his voice cutting through the noise. "Then move," Harrison barked, grabbing Cypher by the arm and pulling him toward the exit. DeWitt was already ahead of them, her weapon blazing as she cleared a path through the remaining Zenithian. They sprinted down the corridor, their footsteps pounding against the metal floor as they raced toward the service tunnel. The moment they burst through the door and into the relative safety of the tunnel, Cypher sealed it behind them, the heavy metal barrier slamming shut with a satisfying clang. The sounds of the Zenithians pounding on the other side echoed through the tunnel, but for now they were safe. Harrison leaned against the wall, panting. His arm throbbed from the Zenithian to his slash, but it wasn't deep enough to slow him down. He looked over at Cypher, who was hunched over, hands on his knees as he tried to catch his breath. "Did you get everything?" Harrison asked, his voice low and steady, despite the adrenaline coursing through it. Cypher nodded, holding up a small data drive. "Everything, the entire treaty. Once we get this out, the world will know." Harrison exhaled slowly, feeling a small sense of victory creep in. But it was short-lived. They weren't out of the woods yet. The Zenithians would be hunting them now, and it was only a matter of time before they tracked them down. "We need to move," Tisbeat said, pushing off the wall and straightening her jacket. "We've got to get this to a secure location before they cut us off." Harrison nodded in agreement. There was no time to waste. With Cypher leading the way, they moved quickly through the tunnel, their footsteps echoing in the confined space. Harrison's mind raced with possibilities, trying to think several steps ahead. They had the proof they needed, but exposing the truth was going to take more than just sending a file. Caulfield and the Zenithians controlled the media, the government, everything. If they didn't handle this carefully, it wouldn't just be their lives on the line. It would be the entire planet. When they finally emerged from the tunnel into the cold night air, the city was quiet, the storm from earlier having passed. But the tension in the air was palpable, like the calm before a much larger storm. Harrison led them toward a nondescript black silver park near the edge of the lot. They piled in, DeWitt taking the wheel as Cypher slid into the back seat, clutching the data drive like it was the most precious thing in the world. "Where to?" DeWitt asked, glancing at Harrison in the rearview mirror. "There's a safe house about 20 miles from here," Harrison replied. "It's off the grid. We can regroup there and figure out our next move." DeWitt nodded and hit the gas, the Suver roaring to life as they sped away from the warehouse. The city lights blurred past them, a reminder of the world they were fighting to protect. Harrison stared out the window, his mind already turning over the next step. They had the proof. Now they just needed to get it out to the people. But something gnawed at him. Something about the mission didn't sit right. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were still missing a crucial piece of the puzzle. His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of a chime from Cypher Established. The hacker pulled it out, his face going pale as he stared at the screen. We've got a problem," Cypher muttered, his voice tight. "What is it?" Harrison asked, leaning forward. "They're retracking us," Cypher said, holding up the tablet to show a blinking red dot on a map of the city. "The Zenithians have a tracer on us. They know exactly where we are." "Damn it!" Harrison cursed, his mind racing. "How much time do we have?" "Not much," Cypher replied. They were closing in fast. DeWitt tightened her grip on the steering wheel, her jaw set. "We need to lose them now." She swerved the Sufer onto a side street, the tires screeching as they veered off the main road. Harrison gritted his teeth, his hand instinctively moving to the weapon at his side. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. They should have been in the clear by now, safely off the grid. But the Zenithians were relentless, and they weren't going to stop until Harrison and his team were either dead or captured. As they sped through the narrow streets, Cypher Stablet beeped again, and his face paled further. "Vivette got drones on us," Cypher said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We've got maybe a minute before they ray right on top of us." Harrison South's mind raced. They couldn't outrun the drones, not in the Suvo. They needed a plan, and fast. "There," Harrison said, pointing to an alleyway up ahead. "Turn there. We'll go on foot." DeWitt didn't hesitate, yanking the wheel to the right and sending the sewer skidding into the alley. The moment the vehicle came to a stop, Harrison was out, his weapon in hand as he scanned the area. The alley was dark, narrow, but there were enough places to hide at least for a little while. "Move, move," Harrison urged, gesturing for Cypher and DeWitt to follow. They scrambled out of the SUV, ducking into the shadows as the distant hum of the drones grew louder. The whirring sound was unmistakable, like the buzzing of a giant mechanical hornet. They crouched behind a stack of crates, the cold air biting at their skin as the drones passed overhead. Harrison held his breath, listening to the sound of the drones sweeping the area. His pulse pounded in his ears, but he forced himself to stay calm. They couldn't afford to make a single mistake. The drones hovered for what felt like an eternity before finally moving on, their red lights disappearing into the distance. "We can stay here," Dotfoot whispered, her eyes scanning the darkened alley. "They'll be back." "I know," Harrison replied, his voice low, "but we need to get to the safe house without leading them straight to it." Cypher glanced around nervously, clutching the data drive to his chest. "How do we lose them? They've got every eye in the sky on us." Harrison thought for a moment, his mind racing. "We split up," he said finally. "I'll lead them away, buy you time to get to the safe house." DeWitt frowned. "James, that's suicide." "Maybe," Harrison said with a grim smile, "but it's the only way. You need to get that data to a secure location. Without it, none of this matters." DeWitt opened her mouth to argue, but Harrison cut her off with a look. "I'll meet you at the safe house when it's clear." There was a tense moment of silence before DeWitt finally nodded. "Be careful." Harrison gave her a brief nod before slipping into the shadows, his weapon held tight in his hand. The sound of the drones grew distant as he moved through the alley, his mind focused on the task ahead. He needed to draw the Zenithians away, give Dowlett and Cypher enough time to escape. It was a dangerous plan, but it was the only one they had. As Harrison disappeared into the night, the weight of the mission settled over him once more. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about the future of humanity, and he wasn't going to let them down.